You close on the house on a Friday. By Saturday morning, you're at Home Depot. You don't need to be there. The house is fine. The floors are fine. The kitchen is fine. Everything passed inspection. You signed the papers. You got the keys. And yet, something inside you is crawling. You walk up the aisles picking up paint swatches you don't need. You spend 45 minutes comparing cabinet hardware with the intensity of someone diffusing a bomb. You text your partner a photo of a faucet and say, "What about this one?" Knowing full well the existing faucet works perfectly and will continue working perfectly until the heat death of the universe. Within 12 months, you will spend $5,000 to $9,000 more on remodeling, furnishings, and appliances than a homeowner who didn't just move. If you bought new construction, make that $9,250. You will rip out things that function. You will replace things that don't need replacing. You will spend money you probably shouldn't on upgrades you didn't plan, driven by an urgency you can't name. And here's the strange part. You won't feel irrational. You'll feel like you're finishing something. Like the house isn't actually yours yet. Not in your bones. Until you've changed something about it. Until you've put your hands on it. Until you've marked it. That feeling is not consumerism. It's not HGTV brainwashing. It's not keeping up with the Joneses. It's a biological imperative older than your species. You are nest building, and your brain will not let you rest until the nest is complete. Now, imagine what happens when 130 million American adults can't build the nest at all because housing is frozen, rates are punishing, and an entire generation is locked out of ownership. Where does that instinct go? This is Mismatch Monday. Welcome to Mismatch Monday on The Wired Ape. I'm Sarah Jamwal, co-founder of The Wired Ape. Today we're talking about the most overlooked biological drive in modern economics, the nesting instinct, and what happens to a species when the nest becomes unaffordable. Here's the roadmap. First, the market data. Why new buyers hemorrhage cash in year one, why the remodeling industry is approaching 2008 level distress, and why Whirlpool's CEO is losing sleep in over a 30-year low in existing home sales. Second, the biology. Nest building as a cross-species neurological drive, not a metaphor, not lifestyle content, a literal hypothalamic program for territorial claiming and spatial identity. Third, the anthropology, threshold rituals across civilizations, the Hindu Griha Pravesh, the Jewish mezuzah, Chinese feng shui, Vastu Shastra, the ancient housewarming, and what they all accomplish neurologically. And fourth, the mismatch. What happens to a generation locked out of ownership, unable to complete a circuit that's been running in mammalian brains for millions of years? We're going to trace your Home Depot compulsion back to the savannah. Let's go. Let me show you a pattern that should embarrass every economist who thinks housing is just a financial asset. According to NAHB estimates using the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditure Survey, a buyer of an existing single-family home spends over $5,200 more on remodeling, furnishings, and appliances in the first year than a comparable homeowner who didn't move. New build buyers, over $9,200 more. For existing homes, nearly $7,400 goes to property alterations and remodeling alone, versus about $4,300 for non-movers. Now, here's the part that breaks standard economic models. AHB's analysis showed that this spending surge isn't funded by cutting elsewhere. New buyers don't reduce spending on entertainment, travel, restaurants, or transportation. They spend more on everything. The home purchase unleashes a generalized spending cascade. The nesting impulse doesn't compete with other desires. It sits on top of them. If you're an economist, that sentence should bother you. Rational agents trade off. They allocate finite resources. They don't just spend more on everything simultaneously because they signed a piece of paper, unless the spending isn't rational in the economic sense. Unless it's driven by something that doesn't consult your budget spreadsheet. Zoom out to the industry level. The U.S. remodeling market hit $509 billion in 2025, massive but masking real pain. After pandemic-era highs that saw spending surge over 25% between 2022 and 2023, the market has been contracting. Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies projected only 1.2% growth for 2025, essentially flat. After 2 years of decline, analysis described conditions approaching the severity of 2008. The cause is simple. Existing home sales hit a 30-year low. Whirlpool cited this directly. The frozen market has crushed appliance demand. Their sales fell at a 4.4 annual rate over 5 years, with revenue declining 10.7% annually over the most recent 2. The premium appliance segment got hammered, consumers trading down from high-end to value tier because the nesting spending cascade that normally follows a purchase simply isn't happening. People aren't buying homes, so people aren't buying Sub-Zeros. The dominoes run that directly. Industry forecasters have a vivid metaphor for what's building: the beach ball underwater effect. There's a massive backlog of deferred nesting projects, bathrooms that haven't been updated in 40 to 50 years, windows original to homes over 2 decades old, kitchens people have been fantasizing about gutting since 20 years ago. The pool of deferred projects is estimated at double the historical norm. But with mortgage rates above 7% and inventory at historic lows, owners who want to move can't, and first-time buyers can't get in. The beach ball is being held underwater by rates and frozen inventory. When it releases, the industry expects a surge. Right now, the nesting instinct of an entire nation is dammed up with nowhere to go. And this isn't a US story. The UK, Canada, Australia, across Europe, same pattern. Unaffordable housing, locked-in owners, a generation of permanent renters, and a home goods industry wondering where the demand went. The demand didn't go away. The biology didn't change. The instinct is just homeless. Let's go to the biology, because this is where it gets humbling. Nest building is not a human invention. It's not cultural. It's not a social construct. It is one of the most deeply conserved behavioral programs in the animal kingdom. Birds build nests, obviously. Rodents build nests. Fish build nests. Some species spend hours arranging pebbles and sands into elaborate structures to attract mates, which, now that I think about it, is basically what you're doing when you redo the kitchen before hosting a dinner party. Orangutans build new sleeping patterns in the canopy every single night. Chimpanzees do the same. Gorillas build ground nests. Paper wasps, termites, ants, all engage in territorial construction following the same functional logic. Select a site, modify the environment, create a defined interior, defend the perimeter. The neurological substrate is ancient. In rodents, nest building is regulated by the medial preoptic area of the hypothalamus, the same region that controls thermoregulation and maternal behavior. The behavior activates on hormonal signals, particularly progesterone and oxytocin, and is suppressed by cortisol. This is critical. Nest building is neurologically linked to safety. When the organism feels safe, it builds. When it feels threatened, it freezes. And the building behavior is itself a safety signal. Engaging in construction tells the brain you are secure enough to invest in long-term habitation. In humans, the nesting instinct is most visibly studied in pregnancy. That third trimester surge of cleaning, organizing, and home preparation that drives women to reorganize closets at 2 a.m. But pregnancy nesting is the most dramatic expression of a drive that operates continuously at a lower level throughout adult's life. Every time you arrange furniture, hang a picture, organize a shelf, repaint a room, you're running the program. The human version maps onto 3 neurological systems. Territorial claiming. When you enter a new space, your stress hormones initially spike. The brain treats any familiar environment as potentially dangerous until it's been mapped. This act of modifying something, changing it, moving it, adding something of yours, sends a signal that reduces the stress response. You've marked the territory. It's yours now. Cortisol drops. This is why new home buyers can't stop remodeling. It's not about the aesthetics. It's about the cortisol. The brain won't register the space as safe home territory until it's been physically modified by the occupants. Buying the house transfers legal ownership. Changing the flooring transfers neurological ownership. And your hypothalamus does not read deeds. Spatial identity formation. Environmental psychologist Harold Proshansky's research on the place identity showed that humans develop a component of self-concept directly tied to the physical spaces they inhabit. Your sense of who you are is partly encoded in the places you've lived. When you choose the paint color, the lighting, the layout, you're not decorating. You're externalizing identity, building a physical representation of your inner self. This is why couples have nuclear-level arguments about tile. The rage you feel when your partner wants the wrong backsplash isn't about backsplash. It's about identity. The space is an extension of self, and modifications to the space are experienced as modifications to the self. The tile fight is an identity fight. Always has been. Across species, a critical function of nest building is defining where inside ends and outside begins. In humans, this manifests as the powerful psychological significance of doors, walls, thresholds, and perimeters. The reason a front door feels disproportionately important, the reason people spend irrationally long on entryway design, is that the boundary between inside and outside is the line where the brain switches from vigilance to rest. Cross that threshold, and the nervous system shifts from scanning to settling. And this is where it gets extraordinary, because every traditional culture that ever existed understood, without neuroimaging, without cortisol assays, without a single journal of environmental psychology subscription, that the transition from not home to home required ritual completion. The Hindu Griha Pravesh, one of the most elaborate housewarming rituals in any tradition, literally entering the house, a Vedic ceremony performed before a family occupies a new home, specific timing via astrological consultation, purification through fire ceremony, boiling of milk to symbolize abundance, application of turmeric and kumkum to the threshold, prayers invoking Vastu Purusha, the deity of the dwelling space. The family enters together, often right foot first. The crossing is ceremonially marked, not walking through a door, but a witnessed, spiritually sanctioned transition from outside to inside, from not ours to ours. What this accomplishes neurologically, a discrete, sensorially rich, socially witnessed completion signal. The territorial claiming system doesn't have to figure out when the space becomes yours. The ritual announces it. Cortisol drops, oxytocin flows, circuit complete. The Jewish mezuzah, a small parchment inscribed with specific Torah passages, enclosed in a decorative case, affixed to the right doorpost with a blessing. Every threshold may receive one, but the front door is primary. It's a permanent territorial marker. This boundary is claimed, this threshold is sacred, and observant Jews touch or kiss the mezuzah when passing through, which means they're reactivating the territorial completion signal multiple times daily. It's neurological maintenance for place-bound bonding, running in the background like a spatial screensaver. Chinese feng shui, often trivialized in the West as mystical decorating. In reality, it's a systematic framework for optimizing the relationship between human occupant and built environment, addressing orientation, flow, boundary, light, and the body's position relative to entrances and exits. The feng shui principle that your bed shouldn't face the door directly, that's territorial vigilance optimization. The sleeping body needs to be positioned where approaching threats can be detected without full arousal. The principle that clutter blocks qi, that's the well-documented psychological finding that visual clutter elevates cortisol and impairs cognitive function. Feng shui is ancient environmental neuroscience encoded in spatial practice. It just didn't bother writing a peer-reviewed paper. Vastu Shastra, Indian science of architecture and spatial harmony, predating feng shui by centuries, prescribes specific room orientations based on cardinal directions, rituals for laying foundations, Bhumi Puja, and detailed guidelines for placing fire, water, and sleep relative to cosmic directions. Like feng shui, it provides an external decision framework for questions the nesting instinct demands but can't always articulate. Where should I sleep? Where should I cook? How should the space be organized so my brain can rest? The universal housewarming, ancient Roman threshold rituals, Scandinavian housewarming traditions, African home blessing ceremonies, Aboriginal Australian camp claiming practices, Mongolian ger protocols. The pattern is universal. New space claimed, community gathers, threshold is marked, food is shared, space is blessed, community witnesses the territorial transition. The housewarming isn't a party. It's a neurological completion ceremony. It tells the occupant's brain, you are home. It tells the community, this is their territory. It creates a social map that allows the new occupant to settle, because the group has recognized the claim. Every one of these traditions solves the same problem: how to tell the human brain that a new space is safe, claimed, and yours. And every one of them solves it in the same way, through ritual that involves sensory engagement, threshold marking, community witnessing, and formal transition. We replaced all of this with a closing attorney and a set of keys. Let's name the mismatch with clinical precision. The nesting instinct requires 3 inputs to complete its circuit: a territory to claim, the ability to modify that territory, and a ritual completion signal that tells the brain the claiming is done. The modern housing market has disrupted all 3 simultaneously. The territory is inaccessible. Homeownership rates for adults under 35 have declined significantly. In London, Sydney, Vancouver, San Francisco, New York, median home prices exceed 10 times median income, a ratio that would have been science fiction a generation ago. Mortgage rates above 7% have created a lock-in effect. Owners can't sell because they lose their 3% rates. Buyers can't enter because the math is punishing. The result is an unprecedented population of permanent renters, people whose nesting instinct fires daily in a space they don't own and can't permanently modify. Every nail hole that violates a lease, every paint color that can't be changed, every landlord visit that reasserts someone else's ownership. The territorial circuit processes all of these as this space is not secure every single time. The modification impulse is blocked. For locked-in homeowners, it's partially open. They can renovate, but can't relocate to a space that actually fits. That's the beach ball underwater, nesting energy partially discharging through renovation, but never fully resolving because the fundamental spatial mismatch remains. For renters, it's almost entirely blocked. Lease restrictions, security deposits, the knowledge that any investment gets abandoned at the next move, all suppressing the behavior. The instinct fires, the environment blocks the response, and the frustration generates chronic low-grade stress. That is why the renter hack genre exists. Peel and stick wallpaper, command strips, removable tile, temporary fixtures. These are prosthetics for a blocked instinct. Partial discharge of the nesting drive without triggering the consequences of permanent modification. But partial discharge is exactly that, partial. The circuit never fully completes. It's like scratching next to the itch. The ritual completion signal has disappeared. Modern buyers sign paperwork at a title company, receive keys, walk into an empty house. No community witnessing, no threshold consecration, no formal marking. No ceremony that rises above logistics. Some still throw housewarming parties, but like the baby shower, the modern housewarming is a fragment of the original. It happens weeks or months after move-in, has no ceremonial structure, doesn't involve threshold marking, and functions as a social gathering rather than a territorial completion ceremony. It's the appetizer pretending to be the meal. The result: the brain's nesting circuit never gets its done signal. Legal ownership says yours. The cortisol system says, not yet. And so you find yourself at Home Depot on Saturday morning, ripping out perfectly functional flooring, chasing a neurological signal that a 15-minute threshold ceremony would have provided for free. And here's the cruelest layer. Modern culture has moralized all of this. Getting on the property ladder is treated as a marker of adulthood and responsibility. Renting is subtly framed as failure, inability to achieve the real version of adult's life. What this does to the nesting instinct is devastating. The drive fires constantly. Claim a space, modify it, secure the perimeter, and the person knows they can't satisfy it. And on top of that, feels like they failed for not being able to. The biological drive gets overlaid with social shame, creating a toxic feedback loop. Instinct generates anxiety. Inability to resolve it generates shame. Shame generates more cortisol. Cortisol suppresses the oxytocin that would have come from successful nesting, and the whole system spirals. This is what I see in renters' sadness content on social media. People filming their apartments with a mix of pride and grief, saying, I know it's not a house, but I tried to make it feel like home. The instinct is intact. The infrastructure is missing. And they're blaming themselves for a mismatch that isn't their fault. So, what did traditional cultures understand that we've lost? 4 things, and none of them require a mortgage. They decoupled nesting from ownership. This is counterintuitive but essential. In many indigenous and semi-nomadic cultures, home wasn't defined by legal title to a fixed structure. It was defined by ritual claiming of whatever space the group currently inhabited. Aboriginal Australian peoples performed elaborate site-specific rituals when establishing camp. Mongolian Gur culture involves specific protocols for entry, orientation, and spatial organization that transform a temporary structure into fully claimed territory every time it's erected. The genius. They separated the neurological ownership signal from permanent legal ownership. You didn't need to own the land to neurologically own the space. The ritual did the work. Threshold marked, interior organized according to sacred principles, community recognized the claim. Circuit complete. This is profoundly relevant for modern renters. Renters lack the ritual infrastructure to generate a neurological ownership signal independent of it. A renter who performs a meaningful space-claiming ritual, marks the threshold, organizes the space intentionally, invites community to witness the claiming, can activate the same completion circuits as a homeowner. The instinct doesn't require a mortgage. It requires a ceremony. They ritualized every spatial transition, not just the first one. Traditional cultures didn't perform one housewarming and call it done. They performed ongoing spatial maintenance rituals, seasonal cleaning ceremonies, harvest decorations, solstice preparations, spring renewal rites. Each reactivated the nesting circuit and reinforced the territorial bond. In Shinto tradition, Susu Hare, the year-end cleaning ritual, isn't about hygiene. It's about spiritual and territorial renewal. You're not cleaning the house. You're reclaiming it, telling the brain annually, ceremonially, this is still yours, still secure. Modern culture has spring cleaning, stripped of its ritual frame, a chore, not a ceremony. No witnessing, no transition marking, no neurological signal, just Windex and resentment. They made the interior a map of meaning, not just function. In Vastu Shastra, every direction carries meaning. Northeast is sacred, water and prayer. Southeast belongs to fire, the kitchen. Southwest is earth, the master bedroom, the seat of stability. Space organized as a cosmological map, embedding the occupants in meaningful relationship with the universe. In Navajo Hogan design, the door faces east, toward the rising sun, toward renewal. Interior organized in interior path, every spatial decision connecting the occupant to larger order. This matters because the nesting instinct isn't just about physical safety. It's about what Proshansky called place identity, integration of space into self-concept. When space is organized according to meaningful framework, the nesting circuit resolves more completely because the space isn't just safe, it's intelligible. The brain can rest. Modern interior design offers aesthetic frameworks but not meaning frameworks. Your living room might look beautiful, but it doesn't orient you in relation to anything larger than a Pinterest board. Partial satisfaction, visual pleasure without existential orientation. They made spatial claiming a community event. Every threshold ritual, Griha Pravesh, mezuzah, housewarming, involves rituals. The community comes, sees the space, blesses it, eats in it, recognizes it as yours. This matters because territorial claiming in social spaces is never purely individual. A territory is only yours when the group recognizes it. Wolf packs maintain territory through scent marking, communicating to other packs. Primates establish territory through visible occupation and group defense. Social recognition is inseparable from the territorial claim itself. Modern buyers close with a lawyer and a stack of documents. The legal system recognizes the claim. The social system hasn't been activated. Neighbors don't know you. Friends haven't been inside. Community hasn't witnessed the transition. The brain's social territorial system, which requires community recognition to fully resolve, stays partly activated. This is why housewarming parties persist without institutional support. Inviting people in, showing them around, feeding them, that's not hospitality for hospitality's sake. It's the social completion arm of the nesting circuit, demanding its input. The instinct manufactures the party even when the culture has forgotten why. Here's the picture. The nesting instinct is a cross-species biological imperative mediated by the hypothalamus, the stress hormone system, and the spatial identity circuits of the brain. It drives organisms to claim territory, modify it, define boundaries, and signal completion. In humans, it's additionally processed through identity formation, meaning making, and social recognition. For the entirety of human existence, this instinct was served by two things: accessible space and completion rituals. You didn't need wealth to claim territory, you needed a space, even temporary, and a cultural framework for claiming it. The ritual did the neurological work that modern people try to accomplish by spending $9,000 at Home Depot. The modern housing crisis has disrupted both simultaneously. Space is inaccessible. Ownership is out of reach for millions. Renters inhabit spaces they can never fully claim. Completion rituals have vanished. No threshold ceremonies, no community witnessing, no sacred spatial frameworks, no formal marking of the transition from not home to home. The result is a population with an activated nesting instinct and no way to complete the circuit. New buyers discharge it through compulsive renovation, spending thousands to achieve neurologically what a ceremony could provide. Locked-in owners experience the beach ball underwater, growing spatial frustration that can't release until rates drop. Permanent renters carry it as chronic activation, unresolvable drive generating ambient anxiety, displacement behaviors, and the deep, unnamed grief of spatial rootlessness. The $509 billion remodeling industry, the home content explosion on social media, the renter hack genre, the hygiene movement, cottagecore, the irrational Saturday morning Home Depot pilgrimage, all symptoms of a single condition, a species that evolved to build nests, living in an environment where the nest is either unaffordable or unclaimable. The instinct isn't the problem. The environment is. And on Friday's Ritual Friday episode, we're building the solution. Not housing policy, ritual. How to perform a threshold ceremony in any space, rented or owned. How to create spatial meaning framework that gives the nesting circuit its completion signal regardless of legal status. How to invite community in a way that activates the social territorial recognition system. How to turn any apartment, any rental, any dwelling into a neurologically claimed home. Because the brain doesn't need a mortgage, it needs a threshold, and the threshold is free. Data drop. New homeowners spend $5,200 to $9,250 more on remodeling, furnishings, and appliances in 1 year. In year one than non-movers. And don't cut spending elsewhere. The nesting cascade sits on top of everything. Existing homebuyers spend nearly $7,400 on alterations and remodeling in year one versus $4,300 for non-movers. U.S. remodeling market, $509 billion in 2025, but growth slowed to 1.2% after 2 years of contraction, approaching 2008 levels. Existing home sales at a 30-year low. Whirlpool sales declining 4.4% annually over 5 years. The beach ball underwater. Deferred remodeling projects are at double the historical norm. Average U.S. bathroom goes 40 to 50 years between updates. Mortgage rates above 7% have created a lock-in effect trapping both sellers and buyers. Nest building is observed across hundreds of species: birds, rodents, primates, fish, insects. In mammals, regulated by the medial preoptic area of the hypothalamus, modulated by progesterone, oxytocin, and cortisol. Renters report higher anxiety and lower well-being than homeowners, even controlling for income, consistent with chronic non-completion of the nesting circuit. The Griha Pravesh, mezuzah, feng shui, Vastu Shastra, Shinto sushi hare, and universal housewarming all share one function: providing the neurological completion signal for territorial claiming. Peel and stick wallpaper, movable tile, and renter-friendly modification products represent a multi-billion-dollar market. Prosthetic nesting for a population whose instinct has been blocked by market conditions. Your brain doesn't care about interest rates. It cares about whether the nest is complete. For millions of people right now, it isn't. Let's go back to Saturday morning. You're at Home Depot, holding a paint swatch. The house is fine. You know it's fine. But something won't settle until you've changed something. Pressed your identity into the walls, made the space yours in a way the deed alone can't accomplish. You're not being impulsive, you're being ancient. 300,000 years of ancestors claimed their spaces by modifying them, building the fire pit, arranging the sleeping area, marking the entrance, inviting the group to witness. When they did, the circuit completed. Cortisol dropped, oxytocin rose, spatial identity locked into place. The nesting was done. The organism could rest. You're completing the same circuit, just with quartz countertops instead of hard stones. And somewhere across town, there's a 28-year-old in a rental apartment, scrolling through interior design TikToks at midnight, feeling an ache she can't name. Same drive, same instinct, same biological mandate to claim and complete a space. But her lease says she can't paint. Her deposit says she can't drill. Her income says she can't buy. Her brain doesn't know about interest rates. Her Stone Age brain doesn't know about interest rates. It knows about nests, and hers isn't finished. We need threshold rituals that work in rental apartments, spatial meaning frameworks that don't require ownership, community ceremonies that validate a renter's claim to home. The nesting instinct will not be suppressed by market conditions. It will only be redirected. The question is whether we redirect it toward compulsive consumption and ambient anxiety, or toward ritual, meaning, and completion. That's Friday. Subscribe to The Wired Ape wherever you listen. Follow us at thewiredape.com. We also want to take a moment to tell you about something we've built specifically for this community. It starts with our spiritual DNA quiz, completely free, doesn't take too much time, and at the end you get a personalized set of ritual practices based on your actual biology, your nervous system, your life. Not a generic wellness plan, yours. Once you have your practices, you can sign up for the Hearthline, our weekly personalized newsletter. For the first 3 months until August 2026, it's completely free. Here's how it works. Each Saturday, you fill in the inner weather report telling us how your rituals are going, what's landing, what's shifting, what's hard. And every Monday, the Hearthline arrives in your inbox with personalized guidance built around exactly where you are that week. You can cancel anytime. Your data is safe, stays private, and we handle it with the same care we bring to everything we do here. Start with the quiz. The link is in the show notes. And the next time you catch yourself browsing cabinet hardware at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, don't judge yourself. Understand yourself. You're not shopping. You're nesting. Your brain has been doing this before your species had a name. I'm Sarah. This has been Mismatch Monday. See you soon.